Welcome to the Seed Sowing Sister Moment with your head seed sowing sister, Patrice. Welcome to the Seed Sowing Sister Movement. I am your head seed sowing sister, Patrice. Today, we're going to be sowing a seed of the unlikely choice. Has there ever been a time when you were the unlikely choice in any situation? Well, in my life, I've been the unlikely choice. I can remember back as a child going out for PE and having the coach say, I'm picking these two children to pick teams. And when they would pick the teams, I would either be picked last or not at all. And it wasn't that I didn't want to be picked, it just was I wasn't picked. So imagine this. I'm short, husky, glasses, with two long ponytails. And I can remember very clearly having one of the people say, no, I'm not picking her because she's slow. She doesn't run. And I remember the pain and the hurt that I felt because I wasn't picked. But then I remember one day talking to my grandmother about it, about not being picked. And she explained to me in her own way that when man doesn't pick you, guess what? God picks you. And today, we're going to discuss a woman that God picked, who was the most unlikely choice in this situation. So, if you will please grab your pen, your paper, and your Bible. We're going to be in Joshua chapter 2 in its full entirety, Joshua chapter 6, verse 17, and also Romans chapter 2, verses 9 through 11. If you would like to follow along, you can get in Bible, any Bible. I'm using my NIV and also my King James Version as well. All right. So let's dive into today's section. We're going to be talking about Rahab and the spies, chapter 2. Then Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent out two spies from Shittim. Go look over the land, he said, especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. Now, isn't that an interesting choice? Joshua sends them over to look over the land, and he says, especially in Jericho. But when he gets there, he's sending them to a prostitute. Now, as you being a person being sent out on a mission, would you just went along with the mission, or would you have asked some questions? Sometimes asking some questions gets us in trouble. Let's keep going. Then the king of Jericho was told, look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land. So the king of Jericho sent his message to Rahab, bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land. So this lets you know that there's some busybodies or some gossipers in the palace, because as soon as these men got in the town, the word was out. and they started at Rahab's house first. But the woman had taken the two men and hidden them. She said, "Yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the city gate, the men left. I don't know which way they went, so go after them quickly. You may catch up with them." But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under the stalks of flax, and she had laid out on the roof. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the fords of the Jordan. And as soon as the pursuers had gone, the gate was shut. Before the spies laid down for the night, she went up on the roof, and she said to them, now let's pause for a second. What do you think she would say to these men? People get caught up and they look at what her profession was at that time, and I can imagine they would be saying, hey, maybe she's going up there to offer them a service. We don't know. But let's find out. She says, I know that the Lord has given this land to you, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the two kings of the Amorites, east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted, and everyone's courage fell because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above, and on the earth below. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and that you will save us from death. I wonder how they responded. Let's jump back in. Our lives for your lives, the men assured her. If you don't tell what we're doing, we will treat you kindly and be faithful in our decision when the Lord gives us this land. So she let them down by a rope through the window, for the house she lived in was part of the city wall. Now she said to them, go to the hills so that the pursuers will not find you. Hide yourselves there for 3 days until they return, and then you go your own way. The men said to her, this oath you made us swear will not be binding on us unless when we enter the land you have tied this scarlet cord to the window through which you let us down, and unless you have brought your father and mother, your brothers, and all of your family into your house. If anyone goes outside of your house into the street, his blood will be on his own head. We will not be responsible. As for anyone who is in the house with you, his blood will be on our head if a hand is laid on him. But if you tell what we are doing, we will be released from the oath you made us swear. Agreed, she replied. Let it be as you say. So she sent them away, and they departed. And she tied the scarlet cord in the window. When they left, they went into the hills and stayed there for 3 days until the pursuers had searched all along the road and returned without finding them. Then the two men started back. They went down out of the hills, forged the river, and came to Joshua, son of Nun, and told him everything that had happened to them. They said to Joshua, "The Lord has surely given the whole land into our hands. All the people are melting in fear because of us." Now let's go into the section and look at Rahab. Now we know that she is noted as a woman of faith in the Bible, but I want to break her down a little bit more. Let's look at her roles in her life. When we look at her, we know that yes, she's a daughter, she's a sister, she's a businesswoman, she is a provider, she's a protector, but she's also a visionary. She was a woman who saw the vision and was ready to move forward. When we look at her, let's break her down. She was what we would call a prostitute with a heart. The first letter I want to look at for her is P. P will be our letter for today. And the first thing I want to look at for her is her position. Now, her position in this community was one as a prostitute. And when you think of that position, you think of someone who is sexually indiscriminative, very corrupt, no morals, someone they would say who is depraved. And I could just imagine how her family spoke to her and how they would say, and here you are out here doing these ungodly things and things that are not of the word, and you're embarrassing us and you're disgracing your mother, and we didn't raise you in this way. But yet that position had a purpose. Her position as a prostitute allowed her to have the inner workings and knowing what was going on in the community. If you look back, she had to be a woman of somewhat of prominence of what this position, because it says the king sent a message to her. So that means the king was aware of what her lifestyle was and what her behaviors were, and he figured, hey, if anybody else knows, she would know. Another thing I want to look at, so her position is one thing, her being the prostitute. 2, she was perceptive. In this situation, she knows that these are men of God. And when she perceives this, immediately her demeanor changes. She doesn't approach them as the average John and ask them if they want to have a good time and how can she help them and what service she could give. She immediately changes her demeanor to one of reverence and honor for these men. She had 3 parts to this. She was able to discern who these men are. She was able to have insight on what God's plan was. And we see that when she talks about them, when she says, I know that this land will be your land and it will be given to you. She also had wisdom to ask for help, for not just herself, but also her family. The third P was that she is a provider. In this situation, she is a provider in 2 realms. The first realm was the natural realm, the worldly realm. In this way, she provided a service of sex. She also provided shelter for the men that she slept with on that day. But let's go a little deeper. In the spiritual realm, she provided a service. She was a servant to these men of God. She provided a shelter for them to be safe for that evening. And she also provided for them a safe route of escape. Because if you look back in the story, around verses 14 through 17, she discusses a different path they should take so that they can be safe when they go back to the area where the Israelites were. We also discover that she is a protector. She's not just a protector of herself, she's a protector for her family as well. And she's also a protector for these men of God, giving them another route, hiding them from the men of the town, giving them an opportunity to finish their assignment successfully. And last but not least, we look at her as a powerful woman of God, because in this situation, she was faced with several different opponents and obstacles, and she took a major risk, truly risking her life by lying to the king to save not just her life, her family, and ultimately these men of God, and allowing them to step fully into their inheritance. So today I want to leave you with two questions. Are you a woman of vision? Can you look at something and see the beauty in it, even when it's at its lowest point? A great example would be someone who is buying a HUD home or a foreclosed home. When they walk in the doors, they usually don't see the home in front of them after the first 5 seconds, because in their mind, they're already seeing how they can update, remodel, create a space of peace, positivity, and newness. That's the person with vision. Another example is having a vision to help someone in the community. Are you a person who has vision to help someone in your community or to problem solve in your community? And if you are a person of vision, how do you see things differently than others around you? Are you that person that says, yes, I know how to solve this problem. We know how to deal with that. Are you the person that says, hey, I just don't want to be a problem solver. Let me be a creator or a innovator to make a change. So I want to take a moment to look and review again the partial Rahab. We looked at today her position, that she was perceptive, that she was a provider, she was also a protector, and last but not least, she was a powerful woman of God. So we're going to pause for a moment, and when we come back, we'll be talking about today's powerful woman of God, another powerful woman of God in our community heroes. Welcome back. So this week's community hero wrote me specifically and said, I don't want to be a community hero. I want to be a community shero. So I am honored this week to share our community shero, and her name is Miss Mirtha Dubois. Miss Mirtha Dubois is an international best-selling author, personal power life coach, a businesswoman, and CEO of Mirtha Dubois Coaching and Consulting. Like our person today in our section, Rahab, Mirtha has had several issues in life as well. In her bio, she called these life interrupters, and she talked about how she has not let these life interrupters interrupt her life. Like so many of us, she's had several issues. However, at the age of 11, Mirtha's oldest brother was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and she was given the responsibility of being his caregiver. At the age of 16, Mirtha was now a full time caregiver and also a parent for her niece at this age. At the age of 22, Mirtha was now taking care of her full family and learning how to overcome the emotional and draining mental abuse in that relationship at that time. However, time and time again, Mirtha rose to the occasion to overcome and put her best foot forward. She lives by three things: having a desire to overcome adversity, doing whatever it takes, and having an attitude to match, and knowing that every interruption in life brings a lesson and it keeps you on your toes to be prepared. Today, we want to celebrate our shero, Mirtha Dubois. If you would like to find out more about our community heroes and sheroes, you can look for them at the Seed Sowing Sister Moment group page on Facebook. If you would like to get in contact with me, Patrice, your seed sowing sister, you can reach me at the seed sowing sister at gmail.com. If you would like to nominate someone for the community heroes or sheroes, you can also leave that information at the Seed Sowing Sister Movement at gmail.com. Well, it's totally been a blast sharing this time with you today. Please keep in touch. If you would like to have a dose of daily encouragement, you can join us on our Facebook page. That is the Seed Sowing Sister Moment. If you would like to keep in touch with us and you would like to get a dose of daily encouragement, you can reach us at the Seed Sowing Sister Movement Facebook page. Well, that's it for this week. Thank you for sharing your time and your excitement with us. Please join us next week when we will be covering the topic of crossing over. What does it mean to cross over in your life and move to greater heights? Thank you again for joining me. I am Patrice, your seed sowing sister. Have a wonderful week.